and I have done so. Thank you, Billy. And if you haven't figured it out by now, we do have fun on the committee. And I think that's part of public image in and of itself, right? It's Rotary, it's fun, it's, you know, we don't have to deal with hard analytical numbers. And sometimes that's just okay. Anyway, I do appreciate y'all joining us again. And if you're new for today, thanks very much for joining today. This class is on storytelling. And Ashley Waters is going to do that for us. Ashley is a member of the Carroll Creek Rotary Club. That's also Frederick, Maryland. If you want to call it that. It's the home to Ashley, who, oh, by the way, is in the process of her working as a doctoral candidate for a doctorate. So if you don't think she's got enough things to do, this woman is amazing. And we are proud to have her on this team with us. Ashley, please, it's all yours.
Yeah, no, talk about pressure. You guys have really prepped this up to be phenomenal. So I hope I don't, I hope I don't disappoint. Just give me a second here. I'm on two screens. Sometimes it gives me, you guys should be good. Alex, you seeing everything?
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
Perfect. So I often say that Rotary is the community that I never knew I needed. Back in 2014, I just had my first child, my only child too, but my first child. And at that time, I was the only person in my very large family that had moved out of a 10-mile radius outside of central Pennsylvania. So here I am in Frederick, Maryland with a new child. I remember just like feeling this sense of new responsibility, right? And I went to my husband one day, whose family lives semi-close by, but not really. And I said, Andrew, I don't know what's going to happen if you get into a car accident. Who the heck is going to take Torin? That's our son's name. Like, who's going to take him? I have no community here in Frederick, and I have this baby, and I was just kind of freaking out, right? And so I said, I need you to find my community here, or we're moving back to Pennsylvania. And he looks at me, and he's like, oh gosh, I don't want to move back to Pennsylvania, so please just go, find your people, find your people. And so the weird thing about Frederick is that there are 600 Rotarians in our town. That is 1/3 of our district, which is kind of remarkable, right? Because there's something in the water here in Frederick about Rotary. And so I just kept hearing this over and over and over again. The people that I did know in town, either through my job or through my church, there's like, well, I have Rotary on Wednesday, or I have Rotary on Thursday, or I have a Rotary thing this weekend. And so eventually I just started asking questions. I was like, well, what is this Rotary thing? You know, fast forward, I've been a Rotarian for about 6 years. And now, in addition to what I say, finding my people, I also have about 20 people on my phone that I would trust my son with in a heartbeat. And as a person in the community, to me, that is why I describe Rotary as the community I didn't know I needed. Because at that time, I was looking for one small thing. And what I found was something so much more than just people that I can trust, but people that are like-minded, that are dedicated to service above self every day, and that honestly are just good humans. And so that's really my Rotary story. And so you just heard me say that, right? And I said that time and time and time again. The first time I said it, I didn't really want it to be rehearsed or even like feel like something. But after I said it the first time, I was like, wow, that's a very different way to approach sharing what Rotary is to you. Because again, we're conditioned to do this pitching of, this is when we meet, this is how big we are, this is kind of what we do in the community, and that may or may not resonate with someone. But if you actually hone in on what Rotary means to you, it's going to open up a lot more. And we've talked today about how Rotary started as a networking organization. Based on its 501c status, it's actually a membership organization. And so sometimes we want to lead with membership, we want to lead with networking, we want to lead with service. But everyone has a different story about why Rotary means to them. So if you pitch me on networking, not really what I was looking for in a way. And so today we're really just going to talk about this, the power of a story, about finding your story, about coaching people in your club to find their own story, but also at a club level as well. Because the reality is that every Rotarian has a story. It's either why you joined Rotary, why you stay in Rotary, how you're involved in Rotary, what kind of service things you do, or your friends, or what it adds to your life. It's all there, right? So everyone has a story. It's just kind of figuring out what it is. That way you're not like Alex, awkward in an airport, talking to someone about polio and about Zoom, right? That's not what we want. We want really your story to captivate someone and be like, huh, Ashley really loves Rotary. And now I kind of know why. I wonder if I would love Rotary that much, right? So before we get into the sequence of the story and how I want you guys to think of this a little bit differently, I'm going to geek out for a little bit because I absolutely love brain science, anything about it, right? Books on sleep, books on like, all of them, right? I don't read fiction, I only read nonfiction. And what I love about why stories stick is because it is just basic brain science. That's what it is. You know, the human brain is wired to respond to well-crafted narratives. You know, neuroscience proves that storytelling is the best way to capture anyone's attention, to bake information into their memories, right? To make sure they don't forget it. And again, it's just been the primal form of communication that people have used time and time again. You know, they offer narratives, they offer stimulation and activation of your brain. And again, it actually releases 3 times more cortexes than any kind of facts and numbers alone. So when you're sitting there thinking, well, I'm just going to tell them we're a 200-person club in Frederick and we meet on Wednesday morning at 7:30, womp, boring. It's going to activate 1 or 2 things, right? A story is going to activate a whole lot more. And so again, it's the big thing about this, the primary function of stories is social connection. They're theory of the mind. It's how our brains are structured to work. And so they provide order. They are often pleasurable to a lot of people. And so again, by taking out that pitch kind of thing you used to learn and the typical elevator pitch type of essence where you're trying to fit in all the details you can, what you want to do is just spark something in someone, right? So that's what we're going to try to get today is the spark. The other thing about stories is there are really 3 types of stories, okay? There's stories of challenge. So you're faced with a series of difficulties that you need to overcome. There's story of connection, which I tend to think my story is a story of connection. And there's stories of ingenuity, people that are finding new ways to do things. The best part about thinking about Rotary in this context is that who here can think of a story that's a challenge, a story that's a connection, or a story of ingenuity of Rotary, right? This just screams Rotary from the top of your mind because we've all had challenges we've had to overcome with Rotary, right? Either personally or as a club in the community that we're trying to approach. Again, connection is huge in Rotary. And we're always trying to solve problems. We're trying to find the new ways to approach things. So in reality, any type of story you really can come up with is going to probably fall right into Rotary's lap. So let's talk about how you craft your Rotary story. So most people, I don't know if anyone by show of hands is familiar with the hero's journey. If you are in marketing or PR, you're going to hear more about the hero's journey, which is a severely long, complicated way that most stories and movies and everything end up being. If I told you we're going to sit down and we're going to go through a 12-step process of how you can formulate your Rotary story, I think I would lose about 95% of you, so we're not going to do that. But again, this is what you're going to see in a lot of places. This is the typical flow of a story. But again, we don't have that much time. We're not trying to produce a 3-hour movie. So there's really just this simplified approach of how you can create your Rotary story. First, you're going to start with a character. That character could be you. It could be someone in need in the community. It could be your club. It could be probably a lot of other things as well. But first you need to know, again, who's the character, give them details about that audience and establish what their goals are. So if you go back to my story, right, I started with the character of me. I gave you details about my family. I gave you details about how I was feeling, and I gave you details on what I was hoping to accomplish, right? I wanted to find my people and find my community. Next, you're going to bring in that conflict or connection, right? So what's the issue? My issue was the fact that I didn't feel like I had anyone. I couldn't take my service-minded self and find other people that wanted to do that with me. That I felt my son could grow up in that, world of service as well. But again, this could look like poor nutrition, right? Access to information or food or healthcare in your community or abroad, access to water. A potential connection that's just not there yet because you need to finesse a few things to make sure you get connected. When you get through that and you kind of evolve, then you're going to take the action, right? And this is the really selling point. This is what did Rotary do to combat the villain in your story or to grow the connection you were hoping to grow? This is typically when you guys decide that as a club, you're going to do X, you're going to fund Y. And again, it just allows that action to be seen as a solution, which is what you want. Obviously, you want to end with the impact, which again, in my story was the fact that I now have 20 names in my phone that I would trust with my son's life. To me, that's true impact, that I get to do things on a regular basis with people that share my feelings about the world. That is impact. Maybe you ended up feeding 6,000 people that weekend. That is impact. Maybe you end up following your scholarship recipient through their story and you find out they got into grad school. That's impact. So making sure you understand what you did, don't stop there. What did it become? And then lastly, we were talking about this earlier, if you happen to be with us then, is this call to action. What exactly is the call to action? Are you trying to get them to join your club? That's what everyone kind of defaults to, right? Well, they should just join our club. Well, they should join maybe your club or another club or just learn more about Rotary. Again, maybe you're trying to sell someone and share a story around an event and you need a sponsor. Well, you're going to go through this approach, right, and explain why they should consider sponsoring your event. And at the end, that ask is going to be very different. Maybe it's going to be to attend a service project for you. Your call to action could be a lot of different things, and you can name it and use whatever phraseology you like. But at the end of it, you need to make sure you move forward and actually just make the ask. Okay? So again, I think when you're deciding on your story, you may have 10 different iterations of story. Your club is going to have a bunch of different stories, but you don't want to try to jam it all into one thing, right? So when you're talking about your story, think about who your audience is, figure out what story is going to work best for them, and then allow them to grow and thrive in that story. By trying to describe everything your club does in 2 minutes, they're not going to find or see any passion behind it. If they're really interested in the environmental work of Rotary, highlight a story about that. If they're really interested in serving abroad and the work we do abroad, then highlight that and make sure your club has a story about that. Personally, you may not have to have all those stories, but your club certainly can. So it's just finding the right balance. And so, again, I think the biggest thing around this as well is that this is your story, especially if you're talking about your story as a Rotarian. Get personal. Think about your unique point of view. You do not need to regurgitate Rotary's vision statement. I'm going to repeat that. You do not need to regurgitate Rotary's vision statement. You know why? Because it's scripted. It's meant for written things. It's not meant for me to engage you on why I love Rotary. When I read it, I'm like, oh, that's a really good way to say that, yeah. But it doesn't excite passion in me, okay? So I think it's really important to make sure that you use your own personal voice and you sound like yourself, because it really does make it more authentic for you and for whoever you're talking about. So I don't know if anyone has a piece of paper in front of them. I'm an activity person. There's no way to fill 45 minutes without an activity. But I really do want us to start thinking about what this is going to look like. So I'm going to pop this up on the screen. I'm also a big logic model person, and so this may look familiar for anyone who does logic modeling. But I want you to think of one thing, either from your personal Rotary story or from your club. And I want you to take that simplified approach, and we're going to do it once here today. But then after today, I want you to do this over and over and over when you feel something that excited you about your club that you want to be able to share with people beyond, okay? So I'm going to give you guys a few minutes. I want you to think of which character you're going to do, right? Are you going to do you as a person? Are you going to do your club as a whole? Are you going to do someone that's in need in your community? Again, find that conflict or connection opportunity. What action, impact, and then what's your ask at the end, or what are you really trying to motivate and move? Okay, so you can do it in boxes, you can do it however you want, but I want you guys to take some time and do that. And I'll switch back to the slide prior. Oops. There we go. Just if you need description of each section, you can see them. I'm going to give you 2 more minutes. Okay, if you're not done, not a problem. But I am going to ask for some volunteers to just walk through. And this is not you giving your pitch to someone, but I would just like to have a few people walk through what project or what story they kind of took and how their arc formulated. If anyone wants to unmute and share.
Yeah, I can go, Ashley.
Awesome,
Okay.
thanks, Karen.
Okay. So the character is me. And I just had closed a business in Brunswick, and my husband's retiring at the end of the year. And so we're retiring in central Pennsylvania. The conflict, you want me to go through all 5, right?
Yep, go ahead.
So the conflict is, what are we going to do? What am I going to do for the next, hopefully 20 years, my last stage of my life? What do I want to concentrate on? We're both in environmental education, environmental sciences. And so I really was focusing towards that. And so when I looked at Rotary, it was just coincidental that they started this whole environmental action group, which was fantastic for me. So I immediately looked at SRAG, and then I joined SRAG, and I've started becoming more aware of focusing what it is I really want to do with this next part of my life. So the impact was, I did lead a small team of my club members from Brunswick in a food waste challenge in the month of April. We had a ball. We learned a lot. It was a lot of fun. So the call to action, I would say, is that I really want to pursue I've have one foot in this other club already up in Huntington, and I'd like to pursue, they don't have an environmental committee. So I really want to pursue starting a environmental committee up there. So I guess that's it.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Karen. So yeah, I think the cool thing about Karen's story is that, you know, it really does align the timing, and obviously Karen's in my district, so I know a little bit about her story and the club she's involved with now and the work they do. But, you know, with Rotary bringing in this environmental area of focus, it really does open up Rotary to be more intriguing and attractive to people that wouldn't have really have seen Rotary as a leader in this area, right? And so I think there's a ton of potential. And also just thinking about, Karen, when you were talking at the end, your call to action, again, your call to action is your call to action, but I could have seen that story going in a few different ways, right? Finding a new club and really activating them in the environmental world. Also, really just sharing more about the environment focus of Rotary, period, or even third, talking about the action groups and networks that evolve that connect you, you know, worldwide with people. Again, depending on who you're talking to and what story you're trying to convey, you can, you know, that's the cool part about some of these stories, right? You can make up your own ending. Where are you headed? Like, where are you trying to go? And so that's really cool. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. Anyone else? Joyce, I saw you working away. Oh, Frank, go ahead.
I have a pretty good story. I have been doing reading buddies at a local elementary school. And a couple of years ago, one morning, a little 7-year-old boy comes walking in. I'm going to be his reading buddy. His t-shirt was inside out and backwards. And so I didn't want to, you know, reach over there, pull his shirt off and do all that. Sorry about that. So I asked the librarian to help him. He changed his shirt. He came back over. He had picked out a book. He could not read the very first word in the book. Had no ability to read. He's a second grader. So fast forward, I've come back about a year later, and there he is, same little fella. His shirt's on right this time. Hair was combed, and he was able to read, but not at the third grade level. He was still struggling, but he could read. And so the call to action for me is that in South Carolina, 64% of fourth graders cannot read to grade level. And I'm going to, as a governor coming up, I'm going to make literacy in South Carolina a #1 priority on my programs. We have got to have an educated cohort moving forward in this age of technology and so forth. So we're going to have a good literacy program. And I think most of the clubs already have a modest program, but we want to ramp it up. So that's my story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Frank, for sharing. So, you know, you have this character, this child, and you can see them not getting the resources they need. So what are you going to do? You're going to bring your club in and your district in to really start working on this. The cool thing is that you may not be able to see the impact yet, but hopefully in a year, you'll be able to report back. So whether you're asking for people to help fund your project or join the project, again, I think you're going to have a lot to work with there. And the other kind of the thread that goes through that that's really important to Rotary right now is equity, right? When you think of a lot of things like literacy, it comes down to equity and access to resources. And so again, I think you can weave a lot into a story around that, where literacy may be the main focus, but there's a lot of these underlying threads that you're pulling out just by telling the story the way you do. Thanks, Frank. Anyone else?
This is Vanna again. I had raised my hand, but I'm just going to jump in. My character is a woman named Kathy Coleman, who lives in our community. She was supposed to get a new brace. She has post-polio syndrome. And she was supposed to get a new brace, but Medicare coverage extended the replacement another year. So her brace was defunct, and she needed another one and couldn't afford to buy it. So I actually reached out to her. This was in the newspaper. I reached out to her to let her know who I was and that polio is a big part of our concern in the world. And and I asked her what we could do to help. Well, as it turned out, one funder actually funded the whole brace for her. And she called me back to thank me so much for stepping up to support her. In that conversation, however, she made a commitment to be the face of post-polio in our October bike ride for polio. So she's going to be part of our program in October to help put a face in America. It's not irrelevant. It's still important, and there are people who still need your help.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I missed your hand. I have that up now so I don't miss anyone else's e-hand. I was looking for virtual or real hands. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we said like, oh, don't start with polio, but this is a perfect example of where polio is the story. And so I think instead of just saying, oh, we do this, we do that, you're going to be able to show a real face around polio and the work we've done, but also the work that we're probably not yet exploring because we're still working on vaccinations abroad and the work that we can do to move forward. Absolutely. So again, just making sure you start with that character, you find the conflict, the action, and the impact, right? The impact is what we're all working towards. It's just really getting there in your arc. Absolutely. Richard, were you raising your, oh, sorry, go ahead, Sue-Ann.
Sure, okay. I don't know if someone else is raising their hand. When I joined the club, I heard about our club had been involved in this project for at least 10 years by that point in time. A local school guidance counselor reached out to the Rotary Club because her perception was we were the people who got things done, and told us about the number of kids coming to school without coats in the wintertime. She works at a Title I school that has 100% free lunch. And so it's now been for over the past 25 years, our club, starting with that one Title I school, and now 7 out of the 10 in our city, we purchase the coats and supply those children with coats. And it's expanded beyond the coats through partnerships with Kohl's and their foundation and their Kohl's Bucks. And so the guidance counselors during the winter break take the Kohl's Bucks in and buy hats and mittens and scarves and underwear and sweatpants, because sometimes these children have those needs. And so it's been now like a close to probably easily 25-year relationship ongoing and taking care of that. So you think of the hundreds and hundreds of kids over the past 25 years that have been impacted by getting, a coat, and we've gone even where we personalize them now. They don't just everyone gets the same cookie cutter coat, because we know how children can be harsh. So that's often something that when people hear about that, they, are inspired to see what else our club does.
Absolutely, Sue-Ann. That's a very good example as well. And I think, again, it naturally follows that story arc. And the cool part about that story is that those types of activities are easily replicable for other things that people may be interested in, right? So there was a need and it was coats. But let's say someone else is more intrigued by shoes or food or reading, right? We were talking about literacy, or eye tests, right? There's so many things. And so I think the cool part about using that example is, depending on who you're talking to, maybe the coat thing doesn't necessarily resonate with them, but something similar could. And it's like, our club dove into this, and we had, someone that led it, and we were ready to go. And we're looking for more projects like this. Like, do you have any ideas? If so, come join us, right? And so I think, again, you can take the story, if you're trying to pitch it to the media one way, if you're trying to pitch it to someone to come and work with you as a Rotary partner or as a fellow Rotarian, it could be, shared a little bit differently. Absolutely. We'll do one more, because I think Maggie and Richard. Okay, we'll do 2 more, Maggie and Richard. Maggie, go first.
Thank you. So the character in my story is a young woman who lives in a village in Botswana. She has 3 kids, she's unemployed, and her youngest son, he's almost 2 years old, about a year and a half old, and he has club feet. He has club foot on both feet. He should be walking, and he's not. He can't walk. And this woman reached out to a Peace Corps volunteer who was also a Rotarian. And the first reaction was, oh God, what could we possibly do?
But the problem was that he needed to be treated. He could be treated, but not in Botswana. He had to go to South Africa, and it was a very difficult challenge. So that was a conflict. The action that was taken was this Rotarian reached out to the Rotary Club at home and friends started raising money to get the child to the treatment in Johannesburg. In the process, connected with an organization called STEPS in South Africa, that this is what they do. They help children with clubfoot. And in that process, I met my mom. She's coming in the door right now. So anyway, so during that process, I'm talking right now, so can you get in?
Yeah.
All right. So during that process, we wanted to go bigger. We realized we helped one child, but that wasn't the answer. So we worked with STEPS to send them more money to help them with the process of spreading the training that they had only in Africa to Nambia and Botswana, and also one other, Zambia, I think, so that they could go out and train people how to do this treatment in those communities, so people did not have to leave their country and travel far distances for a treatment that is life-changing. People who can't walk in Africa are at a very great disadvantage. So that's the kind of thing Rotary can do together. I mean, this Rotarian was out there in a tiny village as a Peace Corps volunteer, but was able to reach out to the Rotary community around the world and other places, not just back here, but and it made a huge difference. So that's the story of Catherine.
Great story, Maggie, and it's very amazing. And I think there's a lot to be said there about the immediate impact, but also the long-term impact and the potential, right? And I think a lot of us probably see that with a lot of our projects in our club, that we have a lot of potential. What do we need? We just need more people, right? We need more Rotarians. We know more good will be done in the world if we have more Rotarians doing the work with us. And so just finding people to go along for that ride and commit. Thank you. All right, Richard, you still there? You still interested in talking?
Okay, very briefly. Character is myself, and I'm trying to rid the world of nuclear weapons by 2030. And also change the mindset of Rotarians and Rotary International. So we're up against people who feel that there is a need for nuclear weapons, that they create safety through deterrence, but feel that in fact it's the opposite. They create fear. They go away against the four-way test, and there's always the risk of accident, miscalculation, and terrorism and unstable governments. So that's the conflict. What we've done to take action is we've put on educational conferences. We've written articles. We're working with Rotary to look at divesting from investing in weapons of mass destruction. And hopefully that they will come up with a plan to do that. And we are convincing more people that this is the way to go as a humanitarian issue. So we have spoken with RI's incoming president, and he's agreed that we need to have more education. So the call for action is to join our movement, to join our cause-based e-club, and to work with us.
Wow, thanks, Richard. I think it's a very different spin on some of the other stories, especially around the activism part, right? So Rotary doesn't necessarily always have that strong activism because we try to stay non-political, and there's some certain things where they try to kind of toe the middle line on. But I do think, again, that's another selling point for people. That's another way to explain how someone can get involved and be part of it, or explain what we're doing, right? We are people of action. That's kind of our leading tagline, but action can also be through education and exploration and reflection. It doesn't always have to be boots on the ground outside. So I think that's a great story. So I know we probably could talk about stories for a really long time. And I personally love hearing things that people are doing, because it just, again, it reminds me why Rotary is so great, because people are so committed to so many different things, responding both locally and globally to the needs of our communities. But so we spent all this time today talking about stories and really trying to just debunk what you guys have learned about elevator pitches and, how to sell Rotary to people, or how to, make your public image stronger. So once you get this great story, again, it's a tool in your toolbox. And so what are you going to do with it? How are you going to use it? So I do want to close with a few tips here. So in addition to those one-on-one conversations, right, because we know that's where stories really shine through, there are a lot of other places you can use them as well. And if you can to keep that story arc going the way it is, these tools can be very effective as well. So first, you have social media. Take the time to think about every post that you make. When you post about working on the side of a road, picking up trash, you can say, well, we did a street cleanup today, we adopted a road. Or you can create the story around it. But, that we know that trash is bad for the environment, but we keep seeing it in our community, so we're committed to help picking it up. Or you could, talk about, let's say you're doing a toy drive, right? You could talk about equity. You could talk about lack of access. You could talk about just, generally wanting to give kids the experience of a holiday. There's so many different ways you can take what you're doing as an action and make it a story. So again, I'm not trying to put more pressure on people around social media, because I know some people get very nervous and freaked out about social media. But if you're going to use it well, right? Take the time to craft the story. Don't just post what you did, post the impact, and post why you're doing it, okay? Secondly is to pitch a local news outlet. Local newspapers and any kind of productions, they are begging for this stuff, right? They don't want to have to keep pulling articles from somewhere else and regurgitating them about all these national issues. They want local stories. They want this kind of stuff. It's easy for them. So again, just think about when you're approaching them. Give them the same story you would give to someone you want to be a Rotarian. Don't just stick to the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, and why. You want to activate them. And if I can find the thing I posted earlier, I post it again, because it actually worked out really well for my club recently. It's a perfect timing for this. My club happens to collect bikes that we send overseas to allow people to get from A to B. And they fix up the bikes, and we work with a local organization that does this worldwide. And the news person, the reporter, ended up rolling up into scene on a bike, right? Like she totally got in character. And she got in character because we told a story, right? We didn't just tell the basic information. We told the story of why transportation is so helpful and bikes are so helpful, when for us, they're recreation. They're not recreation abroad, right? And so if you can tell more of the story, even your news reporters are going to get more engaged with you. And then lastly, videos and other mediums. Videos, we talked about this today, are very, very popular right now. If you can feel the passion and the energy behind someone, even in a 30 to 45 second video clip, it's going to help. So again, think about maybe giving, in addition to classification talks, which I don't know about you guys, but our classification talks have kind of gone like rogue in our club, and they're now like 30-minute presentations on every aspect of your life. And while I appreciate learning about my fellow Rotarians, not really the intent. Ask them to do a passion minute, right? Where they get to talk about what they're most passionate about in their club for a minute, and record it. You have pure gold, right? You just did it for your club, and you can repurpose it. So just think about how you can get your club members to share their stories, taking pictures that tell better stories, putting them together in a quick video that goes back and forth. All of those things, just again, they add to the feeling people get when they see that, right? So if we go back to the very, very beginning, it's going to light up all these things in your brain much more effectively, which is going to cause them to do something, whether that's to donate, whether that's to join you, whether that should just be a supporter or an advocate, right? All those things are going to happen because you lit up their brain in a different way. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, but I just want to really reiterate that storytelling is just the way we need to be approaching things. One story about you, a person in your community or your club, is going to excite someone rather than trying to describe 85 things that your club does in hopes one of them sticks. Okay, so we want to make sure we're taking the time, think strategically, know your audience, and really just take the time to tell a story. Because when you tell a story, whether it's, you know, something you've rehearsed or not, it's coming from a genuine place. So I'm going to pause, I'm going to stop talking and see what questions you guys may have or any other thoughts you guys want to share. Does anyone feel like there are more? Oh, go ahead, Joyce, sorry.
I do have a question. As DGN and we're starting to come back to life again, I'm starting to be asked to speak to clubs. And the biggest challenge that I have been finding is when they say, oh, just talk about anything you want to. It's like, here's the whole world, you know, and the Rotary world is this big and I don't know them yet. That's part of the issue. I kind of missed my year of being able to run around to the club visits as DGN and so forth. So I try to get them to narrow it down a little bit, but when somebody gives you something that broad, what do you do? What do you do?
Well, I think, you know, it's up to you. I would say find something that you can target and stick to. You know, when our RTDs come to my club, they always talk about their goals. And sometimes it's just like womp, 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 womp. It's like new person, new goal. Don't get me on that train. Continuity of like vision for districts is like high on my list of irritations, and I won't digress into that. But I think it's important to just be you, right? And so you're the leader of the district for this year, and you likely have been, you know, will continue to be a leader for your district. Use the time to whatever you want to sell. You know, do you need your clubs to do something, to move something forward, then make it about that. If you want to tell your story about Rotary, then do that. But again, I think you're going to have some kind of arc, or else even if your story is a 45-minute presentation or a 25-minute presentation to a club, it still has to have that arc to excite and to engage them. So I would say, you know, there are probably 85 ways you could run it. I agree with that, but I do think making sure you tell it in a story format will keep them more engaged, because you have the call to action at the end, right? And I like sharing examples and exciting things instead of just like, this is what I need you to do for the year. Because again, I think that just, it brings them along, right? The same thing with sharing the stories today. Everyone's brains are now thinking like, oh, that's a cool idea, or hey, I didn't think of it that way. And so that's what you want. You want to leave them thinking about how they can benefit their community more, not just how we can, you know, check off a few boxes so we all get a Rotary citation. I'm not in Rotary for the Rotary citations. I'm not in it for, you know, other things. You know, I'm in it for, I'm using it for the ability to make impact in my community. So for me, that's how I would lead with that conversation. But I would still try to make sure you have some kind of arc in there, and you end with a call to action. And then really it's just whatever you're passionate and authentically want to talk about that day.
Okay, thank you.
Sue Ann. Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Here we go. Okay, sorry. Joyce, to follow up on that, I can tell you as a club member, and you know, you always hear the DG line coming through, and Ashley's right about, you know, here we go, another set of goals. One of the most inspiring speeches ever was someone's kind of like their Rotary life story and how Rotary had impacted them, and it's unique to them, but your club members will then get to know you better. So I think if you're on your first round of club visits before you become DG, then it helps them know who you are and why you're passionate about Rotary. And I think, I mean, I don't know if many of you may know Susan ZW from our district 7600. She has a very inspiring story, and you know, there were people crying at the end of her presentation. It was just that touching. Not that you got to meet that bar, but I'm just saying we then felt like we knew her. And I think that was very important.
I think part of it
Yeah,
maybe.
call it your Rotary aha moment. I like that, Maggie.
Since you've been down and since we've all been down and out for a year, maybe, and this would be hoping beyond hope, that before you show up at a club, you go research their social media and see what they're doing. And then being able to make a connection with the audience, I think was always a very, I tried very hard to make sure I did that when I walked into a club, and just to make the initial connection that I actually was one of them, and I kind of understood what they did, and I thanked them for a particular project or something that they were certainly proud enough about to put up on social media, and then rolled into whatever I wanted to talk about anyway. So I didn't necessarily focus on them the entire time, but just start that connection, make them make that connection with you, and then roll on to whatever you really did have as a passion for yourself. I think Joy said, I think you'll do amazingly better than you think you will.
We had at the district conference, the last one we were able to do in person, the RI representative was Bruce Goldson. And before he got up to talk, he had done his homework, and he complimented almost every major initiative that was going on in clubs and in the district. It was phenomenal. And I chit-chatted with him after it was over. He said, well, you got pretty good Facebook and posted. And he said, it's pretty easy if you spend a little time. So that's good advice, Alex. I've seen it in person.
In the chat, Vanna, I like you're kind of bringing together Joe's presentation and my presentation, which we hope that, it all just kind of leads together to give you a plan forward today. But, using the idea of storytelling as a first assignment for your PR team. Absolutely, right? You have a set of, if you have a team and you're lucky enough to have a team, ask them their story, have them start crafting stories, because if they can start with their own story, then they're going to be able to work your club stories more comprehensively. And at the district level as well, trying to find those nuggets, those stories at the club level that can kind of come together and create a district-wide story. Sometimes can be really difficult. So the more people you have glued in and paying attention to those things really helps kind of captivate that larger story as well. I know we're running up on time here. I know folks are probably itching to go. So I will put my email in the chat. If you guys ever want to chat about anything, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. I put a lot of stuff on there about Rotary, quite a bit. I'll also be speaking tomorrow during the presidential conference. So I hope to see a lot of you there as well. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for staying in. Thanks for doing an activity, late Friday afternoon. I appreciate it very much.
And for everyone, and on behalf of the entire team, we very much appreciate y'all's time. And thanks for all the clapping. And Ashley certainly deserves that. Y'all do too, for staying with us, because I'm seeing the same faces all day long, and I really appreciate that. If you're all tied up and we don't see you again tomorrow or the next day, just understand that Ashley's offer, Billy's, Ken's, Joe's, mine, they are all absolutely sincere. If you need us, reach out and find us and talk to us. And I will send, again, this entire blurb out to the DG, DGE, DGN, the DG little d, the public image chair of the district. If you're not on that list, ask one of those people to forward it to you. It'll probably be Monday, but I will send out links to everything we've done. And hopefully you can use that as a tool in your toolbox. Thank you very much for your day. We appreciate it so very much. Be very safe, and goodbye.